Speaking of those 91 felony charges, though, up in New York, it's a civil case against him for so-called business fraud and financial fraud, right? And that case is now rested. It's in the hands of a judge. It's not a jury trial. It's a judge trial. And Mr. Wonderful from CNBC was on CNN giving his analysis. And this is actually pretty instructive. Okay, listen carefully to what he has to say, because he's looked at this case, he's looked at the facts and what is currently being charged as fraud in New York City.
You've been doing real estate for decades. Does this case strike you as odd?
Well, let's leave out Trump for a minute and let's leave out politics and just talk about what happens in real estate development anywhere. So if you're a developer and you've got a building on a block anywhere in America and it's worth, let's say, $500 million, and you want to build a building right beside it, you go to the bank and say, this building is worth $500 million. I'd like to borrow a construction finance loan against this asset, and I want you to tell me it's worth $500 million too. And the bank negotiates with you and says, well, no, we think it's worth $400 million, and you fight it out. You're always trying to show your assets in the brightest light with the sunshine you could possibly determine for them. You want them to be worth the very most because you're only going to get a 40 or 50% loan to value, as it's called. Then you borrow that money. In the case of a $500 million asset, maybe you get $250 million, and you build a new building with a construction finance loan. And so that's what this case is all about. And by the way, forget about Trump. Every single real estate developer everywhere on earth does this. They always talk about their asset being worth a lot, and the bank says no. And that's just the way it is. So in this case, when I'm trying to figure out, and I'm not pro or con, or I don't care about the politics, who lost money? Nobody. The bank got paid back the construction finance loan, and a new building was built. And if you're going to sue this case and win, you got to sue every real estate developer everywhere. This is all they do. This is what they do all day long, every day. So I don't think this thing will ever survive appeal, regardless of what the fine is. This doesn't even make sense. Now, look, I know Trump's got a lot of problems in other indictments and everything else, but this, if you're a real estate developer, you're watching this, you're saying, what is this? This is ridiculous.
That's right. He's right. He's 100% right. And he just did more in explaining the charges against Donald Trump than Jake Tapper or George Stephanopoulos or anybody in the mainstream media has done this entire time, because they don't care, you see. And by the way, O'Leary is also right that this will get overturned on appeal, and they don't care about that either. They care about one thing. They want headlines to say, Donald Trump found guilty today. Donald Trump is a criminal. It's official. He defrauded a bank. And meanwhile, the bank is like, yeah, we're fine. We don't feel defrauded. Is this what it feels like to be defrauded? Because it feels fine. But they don't care. That's why, Frank Luntz, that's why Donald Trump is doing well. It's not because his supporters and his voters are just fine with him committing a fraud or committing a felony. Of course we're not. We have values. We have principles. We don't want a candidate to be a crook. The reason that he's doing well is because we can see through the, can I say it again? I will say it again. We can see through the bullshit. And I want to be clear. I want to repeat myself. This is not a jury of Donald Trump's peers. This is a civil case, which, by the way, also means it's not even guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a preponderance of evidence. And by the way, here's more analysis you won't get on cable news or broadcast news because they don't care. The judge is not, the burden of proof here is such that normally you're innocent until proven guilty, right? Not in this case. Donald Trump's team actually has to prove that the charges are wrong. They actually have to prove innocence in this case. I got that because I interviewed a legal analyst, Joe DeGenova, who's the former district attorney, U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. And so, find the news. It's out there. If Donald Trump is found guilty, it's number one, because it's a liberal, biased judge instead of a jury. And number two, the preponderance of the evidence is such that it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, and it's not an innocent until proven guilty thing in this civil case. This is New York for you. And yes, there's no way that this would have ever been brought against anybody and except Donald Trump. Donald Trump's lawyer, Alina Hubba. Is it Hubba? Let's go with Hubba. Hubba. Alina Hubba spoke to this at a press conference after the trial finished.
Good afternoon. Let's remember that before I walked into court, we had already lost. That was clear with his motion for summary judgment. Before witnesses, before experts, and do I think any of it mattered? I certainly hope so. But for anybody that was in the courtroom for the last 11 weeks, you heard that there was not one fact against President Trump. There was not one piece of paper that showed anyone committed fraud. And don't forget that Section 6312, a consumer fraud statute, has been wrongfully used against my client, innocent defendants, the organization, and every employee of the Trump organization, which has single-handedly changed the New York skyline, including the building we are in today. These are special properties. Real estate is an art, not a science. But you know what else is an art? You know what else isn't a science? Political motivated individuals. She's using this to paint a canvas that Donald Trump is a fraudster because they can't beat him in the polls. They can't beat him in the polls. So she ran on Trump because that was the only way she could win. And now today, after 11 weeks, after 3 years, we have concluded that he indeed committed no wrong. The Trump organization committed no wrong. And the kids have been dragged in just like the other defendants. And it is wrong. America needs to step up. And there's only one person who can do that. My client, Donald Trump. President Trump, everybody.
Alina Hubba, that's the lawyer's defense there. So why are they doing this? Why is the left doing this? Why are Democrats doing this? Why are they going out of their way to throw all these charges when these kind of charges have never been brought against a person under similar auspices, let alone a guy who is literally running for president right now? We just don't do that in this country. What's really at play here? Nancy Pelosi, bless her heart, she put her face together and showed up on CNN this weekend, and she sort of gave away the store. We do love it when they say the quiet part out loud.
This is a neck and neck race, and no one feels very comfortable on the Democratic side of things that Donald Trump isn't going to be the next president.
Well, I don't think that nobody feels. I think many of us know that it is impossible for him to be the president again with what he is proposing.
A lot of us know that it is impossible for him to be president again. Boy, that's a strange thing to say, isn't it? With such confidence, too, and such vigor. We know that it's impossible for him to be president. And yet, the polls right now show that the majority of voters in America will vote for him today. Why is she so confident that it is, how did she put it again? Impossible for him to become president?
Well, I don't think that nobody feels. I think many of us know that it is impossible for him to be the president again.
Boy, buckle up. Today's the first day of the presidential election with the Iowa caucus, and it is going to be a hell of a ride with this kind of crap coming from the opponents of the presumptive Republican nominee.